Alrighty. Hey everybody, welcome to Wasm Cloud Wednesday for Wednesday, July 16th. This was a pretty fun last week after the roadmap session last Wednesday. I am going to share the agenda here in just a second, but we actually have definitely not new to the community and to us, but maybe first time doing the community call. Jeremy, would you like to introduce yourself, how you came to the Wasm land and well, anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I've been on a few other community calls, like and especially a very long time ago. I was at Capital One for about 6 or 7 years, and then I switched over to another startup, mainly in the cybersecurity space. But I wanted to come over to Cosmonic to really focus on WebAssembly, and with my passion really around containerized applications. WebAssembly really just seems like it's the obvious next step for just being able to run applications more securely and more efficiently inside the space, especially when it comes to like PCI and PHI type of data. So that's why I'm now in really focused on WebAssembly and on this Wasm Cloud meeting too.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, for you know doing the intro. Um, all right. Well, welcome, Jeremy. I think then we can go ahead and get started on the agenda. Today will be a pretty fun one. Uh, we've got a demo, we've got a discussion, we have an issue of the week, and we have a documentation page of the week. So lots of fun stuff. And you may be asking yourself, well, what is this demo about? Introducing Wash. Don't we already have a Wash? Well, we do already have a Wash, but let me tell you, this has been something that I've been working on over the past couple of weeks. If you click on the link here, I'll go ahead and share the agenda. If you click on the link, you can see the repository where we're doing this work. So I've actually been working out of the Cosmonic Labs repository or organization. It's like where Cosmonic does a bunch of our experiments, and it was just kind of something. This is kind of a temporary move, but I wanted to talk about this project, which is called Wash. But it's more focused on being a lean, mean WebAssembly component development machine. So instead of Wash as it is today, where it's a bundle of command line tools for Wasm Cloud development. I want the core. Yeah, I want to take this RFC, which Taylor worked on quite a while ago, around pluginifying Wash, and like take that to the next level, where the core of Wash is just for Wasm component building, developing, pushing to OCI according to like the standard specs. And then we can have Wasm Cloud specific functionality as plugins to this Wash plugin CLI model. So I want to talk a little bit about why and then talk about how it works. So, really why we are working with this amazing plugin model technology of WebAssembly components all the time. And, it feels silly not to take full advantage of that, especially with our level of expertise of working with components as an application platform. So we want to have our Wasm shell be something that can be really good at developing components. And I think the key workflows of Wash as it is today, the Wasm Cloud shell, reflect that. Utilities like build, which can detect the language of a component project and then build it, and then make sure that it's has the right like it can be componentized. Maybe we sign it afterwards. The dev loop, automatically interpreting those dependencies of a component to run it. That's great. Same with OCI, pushing just to get it up into a package repository. All those key flows are still really central to the component development, but there are also a lot of things that Wash does that isn't quite isn't quite core to that mission. So when thinking about, essentially taking this project that we've had for a long time, like Wash was the first thing that I worked on when I started working on Wasm Cloud like 5 years ago. I'd like to think that I've gotten better at writing Rust since then. And I think that over the years, it's definitely changed and gone through refactors and become a bit of a beast. So there's a lot of different things, but just at the core, thinking about Wash from the ground up with the right level of abstraction, with the right goals in mind of being this lean, great CLI for component development. And then, kind of as a side goal, making it not Wasm Cloud specific, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So Wash, the Wasm Shell. I have diagrams. Diagrams are good. And this is thinking about the life cycle of an individual command in Wash. There's the initialization step, which actually I'm happy to share this Excalidraw too. There's the initialization step, which is like you run a command using the CLI. We parse the arguments. We initialize the directories that we need to work with, which this actually took a lot of inspiration from the community member who contributed the XDG spec for Wash. So thank you so much, F4Z, your name. Initialize the data, config, and cache directories. And then it's very core, but we initialize a WebAssembly runtime. This is using Wasm Cloud runtime under the hood, but it's basically just wrapping Wasm time with like a light abstraction. If it's one of the core commands, like a built-in command like wash build, wash dev, wash push, then we'll go down an execution path. And then if it's a plugin component, then we'll go down the other path. So let's talk about the top one first. So the execution of a CLI command. Commands now have this concept of hooks, which are plugins that you can execute before and after a command occurs. This allows you to do really interesting things like before a build, maybe you'll write out a piece of metadata to the component project, or after a developer loop, maybe you generate a wadm manifest to make sure that you could run that in production. All kinds of things, but this allows the core of the Wash CLI to be hooked into. You can add custom functionality there, and then you can also register top level commands, just like the current Wash plugin structure, where if I run Wash foobar, I go find the Wash foobar plugin, and then I execute it, and we can do all the argument parsing and things like that. So at the core, the wash command lifecycle isn't too different than what it is now, but it does take and everything here in purple is a WebAssembly component. It does take a more comprehensive approach of making plugins a first class citizen instead of like an extra step. Now, currently, with the Wash project, there are a couple of core built-ins. Actually, there's only 8 commands in total, which is quite a lot less than the current Wasm Cloud shell. But there is config, doctor, update, and plugin. So these are the core commands like managing your configuration. Doctor is a sanity check to make sure you have tools installed. Update actually auto updates the CLI from GitHub. Look at that. Pretty cool. That one, may not be as important once we get it to like brew and package managers, but it is neat to watch. And then plugin management. And then looking at the core of component development that is the most powerful in Wash right now. It's the ability to create a project from a Git repo, compile that code into a WebAssembly component, run a developer loop so that you can quickly iterate, and then you take your finished WebAssembly component and push it up to an OCI registry. That is often where the end state is. You push it up to a registry, and then you're going to run it on an edge device or in the cloud or something. It will pull down from that OCI registry, and so at that point Wash is outside of the life cycle. Everything else is a plugin. Everything that is not a part of the core experience right now is I'm proposing is a plugin. So if it's something like uh, you know, generating a wadm manifest for a component, that's a great plugin. That's a great plugin to run after your dev loop. You take your or after your build, you take your finished component and you output a manifest. I have these other ones I'll show in a moment for some of the fun stuff there. But if you take a look, and I'll pause right after I do this. If you take a look, this really, really simplifies the surface of the CLI of Wash. Its core mission is to be a utility for developing WASM components. So locally, you can create templates, build them, do your dev loop, and then push up your finished component to OC to an OCI registry. And actually, other than using the Wasm Cloud runtime crate underneath and the fact that the WIT interface for the plugin is called Wasm Cloud Wash, there's actually nothing Wasm Cloud specific in the Wasm Shell, right? And so there's really no need for us to constrain it, I guess, to Wasm Cloud development. We're under the hood. We're using all of the standard tools and interfaces to make this work. So it's pretty neat at a base level. Does anybody have any questions about this proposal, about like Wash, before I step into a demo and show you how it works? I figured demo's the cool part. Okay, so everything here will look pretty similar to what you're used to, and that's on purpose. Many of the core commands are already present in Wash now, and they're going to work pretty similarly to the way you expect. But there are a couple of key differences, and there are a lot of choices, which some are breaking changes, some are not, but a lot of choices that make it really, really nice for using Wash in a way that many other CLI tools work and that you would expect. So if you come and you read the README for the Wasm shell for Wash, right now all we have is like a curl into Bash or PowerShell, install script. Very simple. I'm lazy. I'm not trying to mess with Brew right now. I will eventually. But the single command install on Linux, Mac, Windows, I feel like is yes, Windows. I feel like is the baseline. So super easy to just get started. Now the rest of them, I am working off of a dev branch, so I'm going to use cargo run for the rest of these. But once you have it installed, super easy. You can run Wash update actually to download the latest version of Wash. It's so nice. But table stakes aside, there are a couple of top level commands which are new and neat. So there is a config top level command, which is not for component configuration. This is where the configuration lives locally on, here, let me zoom in, on your machine. So we're using the XDG spec directory. So if you want to check, like, where's my data, where's my cache, where's my config, here it is. Configuration is something that lives at a global level. So you can take a look at like what templates are installed using this. But then also locally inside of a project, there is a config.json which overrides this global config. And then if you supply command line arguments to a command, that overrides the local config. So there's this level of precedence of more and more specific configuration. And it may look weird to see config.json when we use wasmcloud.toml normally. Total, I don't have a strict preference, honestly, on the config structure. YAML, TOML, JSON, I don't. I really feel like that's like a bike shed. Maybe we could just add support for all of them. But I just went with JSON because it's super easy. Serde has great support, and so we can discuss. We can definitely bike shed on that. So configuration is nice and layered. There are many different aspects to it, but I won't get into everything. Doctor is one of my favorite inclusions. Maybe this doesn't have to be in the core, but it is essentially a sanity check for your configuration, for what kind of project you're developing. So as you can see, Wash Doctor detected that Wash is a Rust project. So if we were building a component, this would be able to check, make sure you have cargo, make sure you have WASM32, WASI P2. It does the same thing in like a TypeScript project to make sure that you have Node and NPM, or in a Go project to make sure you have TinyGo and Wasm tools. You know, these are like the pre-flight checks for whether or not a build is going to succeed at all. So this is really nice. I would love to maybe extend this to support more things, but it is just a nice little utility. Okay, new things aside, let's talk about the core development loop. If we wanted to build a component, let's say we'll go to the Wasm Cloud mono repo, and we'll build the HTTP Hello World component. This is going to look really similar to what you're used to with Wash, but it is a little simpler. You just do Wash build and then provide the path. You know, you don't have to do dash P. It's just like the easiest possible thing to get started. What's also pretty neat is this doesn't actually require a wasmcloud.toml. This works in Wash works entirely by introspecting the project. You know, it sees that it's a cargo.toml. There's a cargo.toml file at the root. It knows that this is a WebAssembly, or sorry, it knows that this is a Rust project. So we're going to build it like a Rust project. That's really neat because you could take like the Bytecode Alliance example components and you could build them with Wash, whereas before you would need to like scaffold your little wasmcloud.toml. So past build, we can also do a dev loop. Same structure for, you know, build and dev. You just point it at a local project. It builds the component and then launches an HTTP server and will listen to requests from that server. So I can curl localhost 8000. You can see hello from Rust. Now, this HTTP server is actually not an HTTP server provider. This is a spun up hyper HTTP server in memory in Rust. And we're basically taking those requests directly and calling the HTTP export on the component. Now, there's a couple other really interesting pieces too. Dev is not launching Wasm Cloud. It's running the Wasm Cloud runtime. And so because it's working at a level that's lower than our host, we don't need to run nats. We don't need to run wadm. Essentially, we can inspect the component itself and know exactly what it needs to run. And if we don't know about it, then we could just basically bail. What's really cool about this is when you're running the development session, it's all ephemeral. It's in this tab. There's nothing, there's no providers being downloaded, nothing executing in the background, but it's all working using, you know, WASI HTTP and the implementations that we expect. So you can think of this dev to be very similar to like Wasm Time Serve right now. So that's neat. Works with HTTP, right? What happens if we try to develop a component like Blobby, right? Blobby is something that uses WASI HTTP. It uses WASI blobstore in order to actually it uses WASI blobstore to store these file blobs, or not files, yeah, store objects in a blob store, and that could be S3, it could be a file system, what have you, it doesn't matter. You'll see that if we try to develop the Blobby project, actually, if we just for what it's worth, if we build the Blobby project, this works fine. We can build the component, no problem. But if we try to develop it, we get an error. Uh, we don't know about that import. That's weird. Hmm. This comes from a something that we talked about in the Wasm Cloud roadmap session, where adding support for many different interfaces in our core leaves us a lot more responsible for the maintenance of those interfaces. And so WASI Blobster right now is a draft. interface. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we have it built into Wasm Cloud right now. It hasn't like gone through any like major changes lately, but if there was a breaking change, then Wasm Cloud would be responsible for, making that rev, supporting both, and then releasing a new version. So wouldn't it be cool if you could use a plugin to implement this interface, which is kind of how we do the capability provider model now, but not a provider plugin, a component plugin. So I actually have an example of a plugin called blobstore file system. This plugin has a pretty simple WIT world. It wait, yes. Nope. Yes. No. Where is it? Oh, it is this. Okay. It exports WASI blobstore and implements the interface for blobstore using WASI file system. So WASI file system is a more is part of WASI 0.2. It is supported pretty well in different language tool chains, but we can actually have a component that implements the entire blobstore interface backing, using a file system to back it. So I think this is probably like a blog post on its own to talk about how this works. But if we build this plugin, then, and this is just a WASI P2 component, um, then the only special thing to make this component essentially be something that you can use in Wash is the export of the Wash plugin interface. So this is what we look for all of our plugins. And essentially what this does is it has a couple metadata information about like, what this is. But we have a specific hook called a dev register. And this will register this component as something that implements interfaces for your development sessions. So if I take this component and I register it or I install the plugin, I'll just do it straight from I'll do wash plugin install, go straight to the component on disk. I installed it properly. Now I can do a plugin list to take a look at what plugins I have installed. Go away. Yay. I have the blobstore file system plugin installed. And all this really means is that I took that component and I stuck it in the data directory, right? But what's cool now is if I do a dev on Blobby, this thing that didn't work before because we didn't know about WASI Blobstore, you'll notice we actually get the HTTP server, right? And then we can do the steps from the blob store, from the blobby readme. We'll create myfile.txt. We'll also do, general Kenobi. I had that one in there already. Then we can upload that file to the blob store. And then we can also, where is it? It's here somewhere. We can download the contents back. So Blobby works as expected, but it's all facilitated by this component that implements this interface that you need to work. So we could create component plugins for WASI key value, WASI config runtime. That's actually like a supported built-in. We could support plugins for completely custom interfaces. If you're doing a development loop and you need something that implements my org colon foobar, you can create a plugin that implements it. And then when you run your dev loop, it's always going to be calling your plugin. One other note is if we do wash config info, the file system that's backing this is actually just under the data directory under dev blobstore. I called my container real for some reason. Oh no, I didn't. It's under default, and there's my file.txt. I've tested with like streaming a big movie also. So you can override this. You can do a couple different things. So yeah, uh, there. That's a neat example of a plugin for dev register. You can also do maybe more traditional hook plugins, like not things like a component is fulfilling a specific aspect of your like a specific interface. We can also, I actually have another plugin, which is something that I was thinking about adding to Wash, but is even cooler as a plugin. This component called Aspire Hotel. And if we install this plugin, then when we run a dev loop, I'll actually just list it so that it'll show you what it does. Um, this plugin has a hook for before development and after development. And you can read from the description, but basically this stands up an hotel dashboard for the dev session, and then we'll exit when you're done. So now if I run the exact same dev command as before the development session actually starts, we get a little confirmation. Hey, this plugin wants to run a native, local command that you have on your system, Docker, with these arguments, and these are just like the all-in-one, Aspire dashboard things. So as soon as I do that, I can see this log from the component. Observability dashboard is available. And hey, look at that. Here's my dashboard. This is just running in it's just running in Docker. There's nothing really super special there. And then when I finish my dev loop, I hit Control C. You can see the component is running afterwards with its after hook, and it'll stop that Aspire dashboard. And it is so stupidly easy to make a plugin like this work, right? We have metadata, which is just like information about, the plugin itself. You have to register for a specific hook or top level command, which is more like traditionally how the plugins work in Wash today. And then I can call this WIT interface to host exec a function. And then of course we have a confirmation for things like that. We're not trying to exit or get around the component security boundary, but we want to be explicit about those things. Ooh, okay. I don't think there's I guess the only other thing that I'll show, which is aspirational and doesn't actually do anything right now, is I can build a plugin, maybe a plugin like wadm, and wadm could be an interesting plugin. I'll run build. Nope, nope. I got distracted. Plugin install this. If I install the wadm plugin, and then I take a look at the list for a little more information, this plugin has two things. It's a hook that runs after development, and it also, I guess I should add that here, it also registers itself as a top level command. So this component, it can execute as a hook, but it can also execute as a top level subcommand in Wash. Masood, I think this is getting at your question. So now I can go run wadm. It doesn't really do anything. It just like logs that it's going to generate wadm manifests. But now, where previously this would not be valid, if you just did like any old plugin, now this actually executes the what? Okay, well, got some things to work out. But I guess it found the wadm plugin. Yay, good job. So there's two types of plugins. It can be a CLI command or a hook into an existing command to like execute before or after it runs. Um, all of these must be WASI P2 components, and all of them must export the Wasm Cloud Wash plugin interface. This is how we know what the plugin, like when it needs to run, and this is how we know information about it. If it's not valid or whatever, then we can't install it as a plugin. Yeah, super fuzzy search. Okay, so I know that that was a lot. Thanks for letting me do a like 25-minute demo and spiel. But this has been something that I've been really, really excited about. Wash is something very near and dear to my heart. I've been working on it for a long, long time. And really what I want Wash to be is this great command line tool for developing WebAssembly components. And there are so many different things as identified in the Plugin-Ify Wash RFC. There's so many different commands that are a part of Wash today that could just be components that are implemented using the component plugin model. And there's so many different opportunities for people to hook into Wash's functionality to do custom fun things, like the Hotel Aspire dashboard. Somebody could do that in like 10 minutes. You know, you could do it with your own like Grafana or what have you. Um, and it's just such a great, oh man, I can't believe you just missed all this. It's such a neat way to think about a command line tool and to lean into components for component development. That I hope that this inspires folks as for to be inspired by this. I have a couple notes about where do we go from here, but I see some questions. Um, Taylor, how does this handle multiple plugins that implement the same interface? It doesn't. You can't do that. Right now, if you have, two components that implement like WASI blobstore, I'm just trying to keep it simple, before we overcomplicate, all the things. But if you have two components that implemented WASI blobstore, you would have to basically pick one to install.
Will Wash catch that for you when you try to install? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it'll say, hey, can't install this plugin, or might catch it at dev time. Be better to do it at install time. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we catch it at dev time. So I think that it would be better to at least give a warning if you install a plugin that is this dev register type.
I mean, in an ideal future, don't consider this now, would be to just hit prompt. You could prompt and say, there's two implementations. Which one do you want to use? And then use that. Anyway, it's really cool. I mostly was asking, I was the plant in the room because I figured that was handled based on if you're new to the call, this normally happens with us. We ask the plant in the room questions. So Brooks showed me this code a little while ago, so I've been super excited. So anyway, but yes, okay, good to know.
Yeah. So for right now, just keeping it simple. Only one, but I think a great feature would be pick. And that would be like super trivial to do. Um, OSS fellow, you asked, so plugins don't have to be hooks, but hooks must be plugins. And that is right. I it's kind of hard to go back and forth on the motivation here. Hopefully we can just get this into documentation, but essentially the different plugins can either be a command, which is like a top level subcommand, or it can be a hook, which is executed before or after a built-in. Feasibly, you could also have hooks for plugins too, like you have your own custom plugin and you want to do something else before it. But I'm just leaving that as a future exercise before we overcomplicate all the things. Oh, and you also asked, people can develop plugins in other languages too, right? 100%. I should have done one in like Go or TypeScript, but 100%. Anything that can compile to a WebAssembly component and export the Wasm Cloud Wash interface can be a can be a Wash plugin. I think that probably I'll convert one or two of them. The blobstore file system one is the more complex one because you're dealing with like exporting resources and things like that. Um, and the uh, and then things like Aspire Hotel and the wadm plugin, maybe those would be better in Go, right? Yeah, and thank you so much for your semi plant question. But yeah, anything that can compile to a WebAssembly component can be a Wash plugin. And of course, wasm, it doesn't matter. From the stream. Hey, stream. Sorry to miss it. Sounds like you've ejected the Wash CLI from Docker nats and are running it as what is in effect a generic Wasm component dev compiler and server on the localhost network. The JavaScript frameworks use this approach, and I would argue are the cutting edge in development environments. Hey, thank you. I really, I with Wash, with being a command line, um, I took really heavy inspiration from the command line interface guidelines website, talking about like, making good command lines. It has a lot of really, really cool philosophies. So I would highly recommend taking a read at this. But what I see as really successful CLIs are for development things. I love npm. Well, I mean npm's got a lot of stuff, but the dev loop of like npm start, boom, here's your thing, and then it just like reloads. Amazing. I am trying to make Wash reflective of a command line interface that you would expect to see with like how are things laid out in Kubernetes or Docker Compose or Docker. The things that people. I know that we're not all cloud, but cloud engineers do. Um, those are the things that I take really heavy inspiration from. So, but to tie it back, yes, exactly. From Wash, I've tried to eject everything that is not core to the component development experience, and then build from the ground up, which is this generic CLI development tool. And so it doesn't have to it we don't have to like bring in all of the Wasm Cloud complexities when you're just doing development. But we can bring them in at the right time, which is like when you run on a server that's not your local host. There's an assumption and an assertion here that Wash is not a production tool. It is not a observability tool for a running Wasm Cloud cluster. It is only for development. And we've talked about that before, but there's still things in Wash right now that could work with, production thing. You can wash app deploy onto a production cluster or something. And my assertion is that Wash should be a developer tool. And while there may be plugins that allow you to interface with production things, those should be considered, kind of at your own risk, leisure, what have you. Um, yeah, I have a fun thing to show, but Taylor, yeah, raise hand.
Yeah, no, okay, I'm going to talk about that. I raised my hand for something else, but I will say like this is something that I'm super excited about, and I'm curious if people have any contrary opinions. But I know like when Brooks and I have and Victor have gone in the past and tried to like do things, it's really hard to detangle the stuff from like what's the dev thing and what's the operational tool and what's that. And I think this is what we've been going for because an operational tool can be a plugin, and that plugin can have whatever config formats and things it wants. But that leads me to my original thing, which is very much related to what Masood asked. You said that it got rid of wasmcloud.toml, and in general, I'm in favor of that. But there are still like useful configuration things, like where it can fetch stuff from and all of that. What's kind of the plan to handle those kind of things going forward?
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I don't reference wasmcloud.toml in Wash now, um, because I wanted to work on this system of having a global config with reasonable defaults, local project config that doesn't need to be at the top level directory, that's totally optional, and then overriding it with command line flags. I don't have a preference if this is I don't have a super strong preference on whether this remains as a wasmcloud.toml or a wash config JSON. I just want to be consistent. So in the global and local locations or how you supply it, it should be just consistent how you supply that configuration. But Taylor, to your question, there are still a lot of valuable um, there are still a lot of valuable pieces of information that are in a wasmcloud.toml, like the extended overrides, like dev configuration, that I think we should preserve. In this version of Wash, I do automatically have the, whackage wit fetching. Like if you have a whackage.lock or a wasmcloud.lock, we'll interpret that. But I don't have the extended overrides yet. But I would certainly want to carry that forward. I have little nit notes about YAML and TOML and JSON, but you know, maybe we could just support all the things. Did that answer your question, Taylor? Are there any other concerns or thoughts?
No, I think just more discussion there later when we get to it. Like it's not a critical thing. I was just curious how you were already approaching it.
Yeah, yeah. There's like, we'll I want to do a full like side by side comparison for like functionality that we have, or like where there's missing gaps in functionality or changes intentionally and things that like just need to be done. No, no. Yeah, Masood, go ahead.
So the reason that I brought this up was that like having it as something that if you want to do advanced thing is needed, but is not needed as bare minimum because I have seen that being kind of a point of friction for people who start with Wasm Cloud, that if you don't have a Wasm Cloud TOML, then things don't work. And because they're not familiar yet with what is going on, it kind of confuses people.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe just to like tie that all the way around. If we look at the implementation of new, if we pick like uh, TypeScript, it would be great to be able to take like the sample WASI HTTP component from the Bytecode Alliance, which of course doesn't have a wasmcloud.toml in it, and build it. And that's exactly what you can do now. Like not needing that wasmcloud.toml you can just like build a project, and it may not always work, right? If you're just like taking a vanilla like Node.js project, maybe it doesn't work 100% of the time, but you don't need like an extra piece of configuration. The other nice thing about this configuration format, I don't know if we always do this with the wasmcloud .toml today, but when you run a wash build, we'll actually generate a that config file for you from the start with the reasonable defaults that we use to execute that command. So this sample that we just cloned down, you can go in and see that under the TypeScript configuration, we're assuming you want to use npm, but maybe you want to change that to yarn or pnpm or whatever. We're going to be running the build command in your package.toml when you like run wash build, but maybe you want to override that. Like adding the sensible defaults and then making it really easy to configure for the user, I think is a real strength of this model. Um, you know, Feasibly, maybe you would just ignore this if you didn't want to have it, but exactly. Something that's easy to configure, but that you don't need to start was the goal there. From the stream. Oh yeah, Taylor, I haven't read it, but if you wanna.
No, I got it. I've just been trying to keep an eye on it because we have some active people on the stream today commenting, so I didn't want it to get lost. They said, I don't know if Wasm Cloud uses a separate manifest for the network like a Kubernetes service or not, but paring things down removes complications and increases dev velocity. And I just wanted to comment on that. Like, I'm not sure if you were able to attend last week's. I'd highly recommend watching last week's call as well, where Brooks kind of went over some of the planning stuff. But this is kind of the vision as a lot of us maintainers have wanted to move to for a while, and that's why it's really nice to have this new wash thing, because it is paring down things and making it very much focused on the dev tool, because we've had things like the WADM manifest, which is how we defined the links because the networking was using NATs underneath the hood. But we've also wanted to make sure that that layer, that orchestration layer, is pluggable. You could do it with just Kubernetes. You could do it with WADM. You could do it with whatever you want to do on top of it. And so separating these things out, it leads to that same goal, which I think is an important thing to note here. Like these aren't isolated changes, especially if you're coming in now. I know we've had a lot of people join the community. Like there's been thinking that's been going on for at least a year, if not longer, and then you can start to see where the vision is leading to, where we have these a better, leaner CLI combined with the fact that the tool to orchestrate it is now pluggable as well. So you can start. It's supposed to be following the same kind of modularity that components enable you to do. So you need something, you plug it in. You don't need it, you don't plug it in. You need something else, you swap it out for something else. And that's kind of where we're going with this as well. So the dev stuff focuses on the dev stuff. Then at runtime in the Wasm Cloud thing, depending on how you're orchestrating it, you set up the links between it. How is it going to actually communicate and all those different things. So just wanted to call that out. That those are these two details we've had from last week and this week kind of go hand in hand of where we're trying to go.
So yeah, um, let's see. We definitely took a lot of time. If folks have other questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I just wanted to give some closing notes about like what does this mean? This wash is effectively, I mean, it is a ground up essential rewrite of wash, and I want to call this out specifically because I want to thank all of the people who have worked on Wash over the last many, many years. The intent here is not to essentially uh, get rid of what we have or the hard work that people have put in contributing. You know, I feel especially like for the folks who are like adding things like the XDG spec into Wasm Cloud Shell now, like those things are not, it's not wasted effort at all. And there's absolutely no way that this version of Wash would exist without all the contributions before. So thank you all. I really hope that that's not a concern when folks see this. I'm not trying to go off in my little hidey hole and then come back and say, hey, here's the best thing. I really just want to take the pluginify concept and run with it, go with the core experience, and then I think that this would what I would love to do is get feedback, you know, have this replace the wash that you have locally for your development for folks who want to like do some, you know, beta testing and things. And I'd like to position this to be a wash v1. You know, right now we're on v 0.42 or something. I'd like to do one of two things. I would either like to position it or as a v1, but the only reason why I wouldn't want to do that is if package managers and our updates and things will break previous scripts because this will be a breaking change. So I want to do a little research to confirm that it'll be all right. If it won't work, then I'd like to move our current Wasm Cloud shell to v1 and then release this under a v2 to signify the breaking change. Numbers are free, so I'm really not concerned either way. But either way, if you take a look at the repo, I released this as v 0.50, which is very cheeky for folks who've been around for a while. But you know, I think that this would be a great, because the core is so small, it's a great candidate for a 1.0. It's so much smaller responsibility than Wash was previously. So that would be my plan. This repository is under Cosmonic Labs, which is where us, you know, some of the folks at Cosmonic, we do some experiments and things. But I plan on bringing this over to the Wasm Cloud repo as soon as we can agree on like what it should be named, and like when folks are happy to test it out. So that's my proposal for rolling it out. Happy to hear thoughts, but generally I would love if folks wanted to poke around and see how it feels to work with. And then as far as plugins go, I think we'll have some core plugins that we'll want to recommend people install. But I don't want to overcomplicate anything like building a registry, although that would be awesome. So, we'll stick plugins in the Wasm Cloud contrib repo. People can go see what kind of plugins there are. If they're top level commands, like, say someone wants to bring over like in key generation into a plugin. Super easy. You can totally do it. People could install like wash keys again, but it doesn't have to be built in, which is awesome. So that's the loose plan. More to come there. But I will get some diagrams together and post this for more general feedback. We're getting really close to the end, so I call for questions. If you have any more questions, though, feel free to hit me up on Slack. Let's go through the rest of the agenda item for today. So I wanted to share, thank you so much, Eric, for doing a Q3 2025 roadmap recap. So this is under our blog. The roadmap recap just covers everything that we went through last week in the community roadmapping planning session. We talked through some of the goals over the next couple of months, the next quarter, and there are some really good insights in here. A little bit more focused on Wasm Cloud, but we're certainly exploring some of these ideas with the Wasm Cloud or the Wasm Shell, like reducing complexity, moving away from like capability providers in the dev session. There are a lot of little things that we're starting to explore here. So thank you so much, Eric, for putting this together, Celium. One of the things that's most explored in Wash Dev is the simplifying the interfaces that we build in. So that component style is really cool. So this one's a great read, especially if you missed last week. If you were there last week, then you heard all of it. But would recommend taking a look. And then I did want to highlight an issue of the week, wow, and a documentation page of the week. So issue of the week, this is the only Good First issue that's on our roadmap right now. So it's a great one to take a look at. Arujwal, sorry if I'm saying it wrong. Looks like you're actually, and I said it because I see you on the call here. Looks like you're actually already on this one, which is awesome. Did you have, hey, well, it looks like you have a question. Why don't we talk about it? I don't know where this shows up. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. So it looks like here this warning shows up when you have a Rust log directive enabled. So I think if you do a Rust log equals info, since it's a warning log, and then wash app list, this will reproduce, hopefully. Thanks, Taylor. See you later. Yeah, did you try this one already? I know you were like working on this like 5 seconds ago.
First of all, hi, Brooks. So yeah, I was checking how to do it, but first of all, I found very hard to find where the wash repo is because I think it was archived and then it moved to the main repo. So I figured it out half an hour ago, and that's when I wrote.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so what we have here really is like it's not in the core command output like when you run wash, but when you enable logging, it does show this warning, which the ask here is that we should be using this model.get endpoint instead of model.list. So once you're able to take care of this one, you won't see this warning anymore.
Okay, I will look into it.
Thank you so much for taking initiative and doing this one. Let us know if you have any other questions. And that's really good feedback though around the wash repository. Yeah, for just maybe a little bit of history, we basically moved all of our projects into this Wasm Cloud, or all of our Rust projects into this Wasm Cloud repository. Um, I think that we added a note, right? Yeah, we did add a note. Maybe we could put it in the description too. So sorry that there was some confusion there. And then so that was the issue of the week. Thank you so much for taking that one on, which is awesome. The last but certainly not least, very exciting documentation of the week is under our contributing guide. Thank you so much, Eric. We actually have a community Wasm Cloud room in Excalidraw now. So if you are making oh my God, light mode. If you're making diagrams that are about Wasm Cloud, whether it's like you wanted to contribute a diagram to the Wasm Cloud documentation, or you're showing off Wasm Cloud inside of your organization, maybe to talk about how it works. You can take a look at our shared Excalidraw room here. So as you can see, some of the diagrams that we had, like in the road mapping session, are here in the actual in the actual documentation. This is what we use. And so this is a great place to grab your stuff and make some diagrams. So this, you should be able to just like copy paste these into your own uh, diagram, Excalidraw, what is it called? Canvas. And really, I think the only thing left to do here is to get Aditya in as a editor on this one, so that he can throw in the component based diagrams. So yeah, this one is a welcome addition. So thank you, Eric, for getting this in. And again, this is under the contributing documentation guide. So woohoo, we did it. Okay. Well, we are actually over time now. So thanks everybody for coming in, listening for quite a while. Exciting stuff. Roadmap going pretty good. Exciting moves on Wash and on our on the just community in general. So thanks everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your week.